Hey, hello, and welcome back. I am working on tiny little starships today. Specifically, I'm working on one tiny starship. It is the Constitution class starship, more commonly known as the Enterprise, though I don't know if I'm actually making the Enterprise today, and we'll figure that out as we go along. I purchased these as a set from Amarillo Design Bureau, who are the makers of Starfleet Battles and Federation Commander, which is really what you would use these ships for. And but they do not originate with that company. These have actually been around since 1976. I was 10 when these were originally released, and they were released for I don't even remember the name of the game, but it was created by Luzaki and his company Game Science, I believe. And that's why they have these weird bases, because these bases were specific to that game. And they have held up remarkably well for miniatures that were created that long ago. We often think of that time as being the Dark Ages in miniature creation, but as it turns out, these things are really more like tiny model kits than they are miniatures, and I've really been enjoying the hell out of painting them. So I'm going to share some of that work with you, and so why don't we take a look first at what I've done over the last couple of weeks, and then we'll get to what we're going to be doing today. So here we have the three ships that I've been working on recently. This is a Saladin class destroyer. This is, I believe it's Hermes class scout. That's the Revere, by the way. I don't know what this one's called yet. And in the back we've got a dreadnought with the three nacelles. And as you can see, they're pretty fabulous. I like them quite a bit. I've had a lot of fun painting them, and but what really sells them are the decals. And as you might imagine, the time it takes to do the decals exceeds the time it takes to actually paint the rest of the model. So this is probably going to be a video in two parts. We're going to start with the paint, and then we'll move to the decals as part two. So let's get down to it. Okay, so to begin with, I've already done a base coat on this, and I've done I started doing all of the prep work, and there really is not a lot to do here aside from basic assembly. They are very clean models. Now there's a couple of things after I got all the base coat done I realized I could have done that I did not do. For example, right here and here on the nacelles, and then down here on these struts, there are small, I don't even know what to call them. They're like casting remnants of the casting process. I don't know exactly why they're there, but they're there. And, well, they're not supposed to be there. So I could have filed those off, filled and filed. I did not, because I didn't see them. And I'm not going to now, because, well, it's a little late in the day to be doing that kind of repair work to this paint, and it's not that important to me, and if you want to do it, you can do it. But just so that you know, this comes in several pieces. So each nacelle and its accompanying strut are a single piece. Each one of those is a single piece. The saucer section and its support hull piece is a separate section, and then the forward dish is its own piece. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces total to put together. And to be honest, you could snap fit this and it would be fine and probably never come apart. I did not. But I'm just saying that you could, if you wanted to. That is certainly an option. It fits together that well. And then I did a base coat of light gray Vallejo airbrush primer, which I determined to be way too light for what I want it to be, for what I want the color to be. And then I did a base coat of, let me see if I can grab this real quick. This is Joe Sonia Nimbus Gray. And Nimbus Gray is what I determined to be a very close approximation to what I think the actual color of the Enterprise is. And I did say Enterprise because I'm basing all of these colors, regardless of whether or not I mark this up as the Enterprise. All of the ships in the original series that you eventually see tend to be the same color. So anyway, the Nimbus Gray seemed to be the closest. It's a bit dark though, so I did one coat of straight Nimbus Gray, and then I lightened it about 50-50 with white, and I did another lighter coat, primarily over the top, not so much over the bottom, because I didn't mind if the bottom was a little bit darker, and created the final color, which, again, to my eye, seems pretty nice. Now again, here is the Dreadnought, and you can see, well, in this it's going to look a little darker because of the other colors that I have on there, and that's okay too. And I will get to what those other colors are and how we came about painting them. But I did want to cover my decision for the base coat, and there's actually, I mean, interestingly, the painting instructions for this model says to paint it white, which, okay, I don't paint anything just white, ever. So it wasn't going to be that. Not only that, that's not even right. That's not even close to it. And I'm not, a sci-fi rivet counter. I think that everybody should do whatever they want with their own models. Paint them however you like. But in this case, I did want it to, at least in my mind, in my eye, approximate what I think the thing looks like on screen. And I actually did some research just because I was curious, and there is an article out there that discusses with some authority what color the original studio model for the Enterprise was, and it turns out it has a bit of green to it. But that's not getting the right color to a studio model isn't really what was important to me. To me, it was important for me to look at it and go, yeah, that looks right. So this was the color I went with. And I wish I could tell you exactly, what matching color this is to, for example, Citadel or P3, but I don't know. I didn't find a color in those that I thought was close. I guess Administratum Gray might be okay. But I think really what made this one work for me is that it's not exactly neutral gray. I think it's got a little bit of, I don't know, a little coolness to it. I don't know, it just looked right. That's the important thing. And so when you paint yours, make sure it looks right to you, however that means. If you paint it black and that's what looks right to you, that's good. Alright, so moving on from here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a batch of a thin wash of Agrax Earthshade. And I'm doing that with my usual mix of Liquitex Airbrush Medium and a little retarder and a little bit of Flow Aid. And then, of course, Agrax Earthshade. And this is actually going to be quite quite thin. I would say 2 parts Earthshade to about 8 parts, so maybe 1 to 4. 2 to 8 is 1 to 4. And this, well, we're going to figure out as we go whether or not that's exactly what I want. Unfortunately, I don't have recipes. I have eyeball. I do everything by eye. And you do it enough and you just remember how you did it last time. So this is going to be my outline for all the various bits of detail on this. This is going to be how we define those bits. And I'm going to do that by brushing this directly into those areas. And this is not a wash. It acts like a wash, but I'm not washing it over everything. I am actually placing this where I want it to be and letting the action of the wash do the rest of the work. And as it turns out, I think this is going to be just a bit on the well, you know what? Now that I back off and look at it in the light, I think that's going to be fine. Oh, that's going to be good. Okay, great. I'll see if I can adjust the lighting in post so that you can actually see. Part of the problem of what I'm trying to show you here is that it's very, very subtle. You can see it here, what the final results are like. Well, kinda, because some of the there, that's better. But you can also see that it's quite subtle. It's a quite subtle effect. So, yeah, I'm just going to resume going through and touching all of these detail elements. And because it's so thin, because it's so transparent, it should really do exactly what I want it to do, which is to just bring out sort of a defining line between the hull and whatever the detail is. So while working on this, I've actually learned so much more about the Enterprise, the original series Enterprise, than I ever knew in my entire life. And I consider myself something of a fan of the show, and yet I was never an obsessive fan. So I'm not one of those guys who memorized all the details based on the tech manuals and such, although I do have a copy of the old series Starfleet technical manual in the mail right now. I've never owned a copy before, and I figured it was about time. Alright, so I don't think you necessarily need to see me do all of this, but let me show you the next step, because it's something that I chose to do, but it's not strictly necessary, and it's certainly not something that you'll see in the series, but I thought it was something that really helped. Now, This kit on the hull, let's see if we can see it, has some raised panel lines, which I think you can see there. Now, for a kit of this scale, that should not be there. Those should not, it's completely out of scale, they're raised, they're not recessed. It's silly, and don't even get me started on the mongoose one. But since they're there, I thought that I could work with them and do something fun with them. And as you can see, I did on the other ships. By the way, this one's going to get, I know this one looks really shiny. You know, maybe I should be showing you the other ones because these have actually had the matte coat put on them. So anyway, what I did is I went ahead and lined those panel lines with this same wash that I just created to give a kind of subtle weathering effect to the hull. Now, I really like it. Is it strictly necessary? No, I don't think so. I've seen some really nice painted versions of these models that don't do this. But I like how it turned out, and the fact that these lines are here meant that I wanted to do something with them. By the way, this is a lot easier to do when you're not filming, just so you know. But the lines make fantastic guides for doing this kind of, well, for doing this, exactly. And I think the effect is pretty cool. But the trick is, like everything else with regards to painting this thing, is you want it to be subtle. You don't want to black line this thing. That would just look kind of awful. So you just go through with your brush and create, oops, oh, stop. Go through your brush and you create very, very subtle changes in the surface color. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the rest of those lines, and I'm going to do the rest of my outlining of the details, and then I will come back. So as you can see, I hope, I've got all of that that very subtle wash on there, as well as the underside of the hull. And I think it came out quite well. But it's time to move on. And the next thing I'm going to do is some gray. And this is, I like the gray that I've used, but I think it's a little darker than it probably should be. But I don't have a good premix. I really like using pre-mixed colors on this stuff, because that way next time I do it, I know I can just nail it, and I know I did a mixed color for the hull, but you know, that was different, and I know that I can replicate that in the future if I want. But for the purposes of what we're doing now, I'm going to be using Mechanicus Standard Gray, which is a fairly dark gray. And I'm just going to mix up a little batch. So I got that there. Got a little drop of my medium. And so there's a handful of areas that need this color. So the well, we can actually look at this model, and you can see I've got it on the tips of the nacelles. I've got it inside this area of the nacelles. This area is really weird. You know, I see it modeled in different ways in you know, as I was doing my research. Sometimes it appears that those are open, sometimes they appear to be closed. Sometimes people paint them all gray. But I'm going to do what I did here, which is paint the interior section of that gray. Also, the interior of the nacelle and these little bits here and here. So I'm going to do that. That was actually a good reminder for me of what the hell it was I was doing. Alright, so I had to get my magnifier all working here. Let us start on this area of the nacelles. This is probably the hardest part because it's a freehand. And I also bring it around under here as well. And I don't think that's necessarily supposed to be like this, but it provides a good contrast when the little ball in back gets painted light gray to white. So I go ahead and do it. The easiest way to get this in a straight line is to actually use the brush in a straight line. But I kind of need to see where my boundaries are there. And I want it to go just to the edge of the bottom portion of the nacelle. So Okay, I'm going to get this, the rest of this done off camera because trying to do this on camera is proving to be next to impossible. So I'll be back momentarily. Okay, so I went ahead and finished up all the gray, and then I went in and I mixed up a batch of my base coat color, and I did touch up, and that is really, it's important to go in and fix your mistakes, because otherwise how is it going to look great? Nobody does it perfectly the first time through, I don't think. So and I already see some areas where I needed a little bit more touch-up, but I'll get back to that later. What I'm going to do right now is I have mixed up a little batch of white here, and I am going to use that to hit, I had a little hair on my brush. Anyway, I'm going to go in and touch all of these little lights. And a little later I'm going to get those panels as well, because those are seem to be lit panels of some sort. I don't know what they're actually supposed to be, but they do appear to have a glow to them. And then the bridge dome. Alright, so with those done, I'm actually going to go and hit the running lights really quick. And those are the lights on the port and starboard side of the ship. And those are red and green. And I'm actually using, for the red, I'm going to use Bloodletter. And for the green, I'm going to use Waywatcher green. And these are glazes. These are not shades. And I'm using these because they give a really nice color. Very primary red and green colors. And I'll go ahead and flip this side. But also because there are glazes, I'm going to get a nice hot spot on the white there. Here, we're going to look at that a little closer up, perhaps. There we go. Oh, and it's gone again. And that'll give a really nice effect as if it were lit. So that is the red. Is the green. The green's not quite as intense as the red, but it still looks good. The green, I usually give it another coat once it dries. So I just noticed that these little bumps, oops, wrong brush. I noticed these little bumps here and here were not painted, and they're supposed to be. Now those are, from what I recall, these are actually supposed to be little phaser bumps or something. I don't think they're ever utilized in that way in the show. Phaser fire always comes from the little dome down here. Alright. So that looks good. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prep the nacelles for paint with a coat of paint. Now this is a really old bottle of mithril silver that I have from back in the day. But any bright color, bright metallic color, bright silver would do as well on this. And I'm essentially just going to paint the nacelles. This is essentially an undercoat. When this is done and dry, then I'm going to use more of those glazes on top of this. It's almost like the process that a car painter would use to paint like a candy apple red. I might try something else here too. But what this is going to do is kind of simulate the glow of the nacelles. Because the silver will continue to diffuse and reflect light even when it's covered with the color layer. So that's the start. Alright, so at this point I'm going to create my nacelle color. And I'm going to use equal parts of Lamenters yellow and Bloodletter. Give or take, more or less. Let's see. Alright, this creates a really intense orange color. Alright, so that is the first layer. I'm going to do at least 2, probably 3, but I'm going to make sure this is covered well. Oops, oh crap, oh good, that came right off. Alright, and I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to do my other coats. And when I come back, well, we'll get a look at that, and then we'll see where we are. What the heck? And then I'll get that off of there. I'll be right back. So what I'm going to do right now is prep the dish area for its color, because it's going to be a copper, but I can't really paint copper on top of that near white color. It just won't work well. It'll take too many coats to get it just right. So I'm going to start with a dark brown. And the dark brown I'm going to use is Dryad Bark. I think I need a little bit bigger brush than I've been using. And the purpose of this coat, again, is just to provide a better base for the copper that I'm going to be putting on there later. Alright, so there we go. Let's see if we can get that focused in. You can see that not only is it the dish itself, but it's the area behind the dish. And so now I'm going to let that dry. And in looking at those nacelles, I might actually give those a coat of red. I'm not completely thrilled with the orange. I've actually been doing all of the other ones in red, and I thought I'd experiment with this one. So those are a little more red than orange, and I really like how those look. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to give the nacelles a little red and do touch up on them, and then I'm going to come back and we'll do the copper. Alright, so I just put a little bit of red on the nacelle domes. I also went ahead and put a bit of yellow glaze on these domes here, and then I touched them with a little bit more white again. And I just wanted to have a little bit of a sort of a lighted, warm glow effect to those. So at this point, we're going to do our copper on the, let me see if I can get this light in here better maybe. So yeah, this is the Hashhut copper from Citadel, and I've thinned it down a little bit just with a bit of water this time. I was kind of hoping that it would dry faster if I didn't use my mix, because that includes retarder in it. And this is going to go all around the dish and the area behind the dish as well. And you want to make sure you just get a nice even coat, which I have not done yet. But it looks like it's coming along. Here, we'll help the drying process. So we can jump right to the second coat here. By the way, that hair dryer is probably one of my most used tools in the shop. I think I will leave everything behind there dark. I kind of like how that looks. It makes the dish itself pop a little bit more. Alright, so there is that. Now there's really just one more thing I'm going to do there, and that is, I'm going to grab, let me see if I can find it, oh there it is. I'm going to grab my Reichland Flesh Shade. And drop it right onto the dish. But mostly I want it to collect at the center there like that. And now I'm going to let that dry. I usually don't like to force the shades to dry because they can do weird things when they do. If it's getting close, I'll kick it over. Oh, you know what? There is something else we can do here while we wait for that to dry. Alright, so bring my core color back over. Oh, that dark gray is going to need a little touch up. Alright, so yeah, I'm going to continue putting on this hull color until I get it nice and even, and then I'm going to touch it just on the tips with a little bit of pure white, and then it'll give it a really interesting glow effect. But I'm going to do that off camera because this is kind of a little tough to do, so I will be back momentarily. Alright, so there we go with that. And at this point, I think I'm just going to go through and do some touch-up work, and that's going to be about, whoops, that's going to be about it for now. In fact, that is going to conclude the painting portion of our tutorial. Yeah, so at this point, oh, you know what, there's probably going to be a little green on top of that. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about that right now. Yeah, there's usually like a running light on top of there. I don't think I'm going to bother with it. I did also do these little panels, the little lighted panels that are right there. Yeah, anyway, so at this point we are going to be moving to the decaling portion of our show. But that's going to be in the next episode, and I will do that tomorrow. But that's it for now. And remember, if you liked the video, please like the video. It does help, actually. And if you don't want to miss the next episode or future episodes, then be sure to subscribe. And that's going to be it for now, and I will talk to you later.